Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion about astrology, art, and spiritual adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore concepts that allow us to broaden our view of the world. You'll hear interesting topics, meet fascinating guests, and discover who you really are. Using the time-tested practices of astrology, you'll learn how to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Astrology, art, and spiritual adventure on Turning of the Wheel TV with Chris Flisher. Hey, welcome to Turning of the Wheel. As you know, I usually talk about astrology on the show, but every once in a while I like to try something different. My name's Chris Flisher, and I love to talk about esoteric topics that sort of help us broaden our view of the world. And, you know, this great giant ball we're sitting on, swirling through the universe, is something that's always fascinated me. Now, astrology, as you know, is a time-based modality, meaning that the time that you're born is largely based on where you are and how you arrive in the world at that time. You have attributes based on a singular point in time. So my guest today is Michael Gallileo. He's named after the famous Italian philosopher, mathematician, astronomer. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about the subject of time. Time and how it moves, time and how we view it, because it is a very interesting construct, something that's always fascinated me, because we never really have anything more than what we have right here and now. And of course, the beauty of cameras and technology has brought us to the spot where we can review ourselves again in time later on. That's the beauty of modern day technology, and it's ever since the camera was invented. But ultimately, as we speak right now, all we have is this moment. So it's great to have you on, Michael. Thank you so much for coming out here to meet us and talk to us. And we have had several radio shows together talking about the concept of time, and so it's been great to be able to meet in person and sort of continue our conversation further, because we're both sort of fascinated in this the passage of time. You know, much has been said about the passage of time. You know, there's many metaphysical angles that go with time. There's religious aspects that go with time. We have calendars, we have years, we've got seasons, we've got hours, we've got days, we've got minutes. They're all tied to something, and that's what Michael is going to be discussing with us today. And so it's great to have you on at the show today, and I appreciate you coming down to the studio to talk about this. So let's get some interesting things out on the table first. Sort of set the stage for us here with regard to the topic of time. And why, first of all, why are you so interested in time?
Well, because it's a grand illusion, and many of us are hypnotized by that illusion. And the name Michael Gallileo is a combination, as you said, of the scientist Galileo, who sought truth through the movement of planets and the way the world really worked, and Michael being the archangel from my spiritual religious background. And it's a combination of those two, the spiritual and the scientific, that has made me understand the importance of time for human beings to be able to construct the world that we can imagine it to be in the way we would like it to be. Mm-hmm. So it's a tool. It's a tool.
I mean, that's very similar to my sort of process as well, because I think of astrology very much as a metaphysical modality, as well as being based in science. So we have something in common there. We're sort of looking at the world from a different view based on the concept of time. Now, when we think, I always think, I know this is a fact, I think of time as a helios, sort of this gigantic, like a corkscrew. So we have this passage of time going through the universe of events, but we're going down the road each time, further down the road, and we can't go backwards in that. We can never go backwards in that, although Hollywood has tried to help us go backwards many times with Back to the Future and other things, but we really can't go backwards. And so all we really have is this moment. And when you sort of characterize the passage of time, how do you view it? You have a way of measuring it.
Well, first of all, you're a little further up the chain when you start talking about time happening in a particular way as movement. Time is only possible because of that movement, but that movement in and of itself is not time. That movement is what we use to construct a system based upon the monitoring of the repetition of an event. The monitoring of that repetition of an event is what we create time with. We track the amount of days it takes for the Earth to make one full rotation around the sun, and we call that a year. In fact, that's actually 584 million miles. Of course, that's how far the Earth has traveled. And it does that every day. We travel 1.6 million miles through space. And that equates to 18.5 miles a second.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that time really is a measure of distance.
Actually, that's what it is. And when you get down to the causal dynamic that drives this universe from one moment to the next, you not only uncover the source of time, but you also uncover the source of gravity and karma. They're all tied into that continual motion that is caused by basically what you would consider to be like an electromagnet.
Huh. Interesting. So the fact that they are all tied together, and how does karma and all that tie in with the speed of travel?
Well, it's not so much the speed as it is the consistency of the change from what things are to where they're going. As each moment becomes the next, reality responds to choices that are made in the current moment, what we call now. So by understanding time as a sequential, basically a linear event, because it's man-made, the motions may repeat themselves, but time in and of itself is a continuum from beginning to end. All things in this universe live from beginning to end, whether it's a person, a corporation, a TV show, whatever it may be. Everything that comes into existence moves from beginning to end. And we humans have determined a system of time that we use then to apply to create an age so that we can determine how long something has been around, because we're using that motion to create the karmic world around us that we experience. So, I mean, that's the only purpose for time.
Well, yeah, and it sort of gives us a foundation for understanding the relevance and the context of events and people in our lives and things that we do. You have to have some sort of overarching structure that sort of holds that all together. And there really is no other way to really explain it, because it is such an elusive concept. When you talk about sort of the decisions we make now impact what we do next, that would be the true for almost for everything. I mean, I remember one time we had this conversation where you said the second that just passed just right now, contains all of history in it, because history is cumulative. So all of history is contained within that second, if you think about it, because it's a snapshot of that. But that's a very difficult concept, I think, for some people to get around, because you think, well, the last second was just the last second. We're sitting in a television studio. We're not, we're not with Napoleon at Waterloo, and yet it's all part of that long continuum. So is it a cumulative construct, time?
Yes, it is, and in and of itself, because time doesn't exist. It's a man-made construct. What exists is the continuous motion, things changing from what they are to what they're becoming.
So we're like a river.
But it is a river, and it moves from beginning to end, and for humans, that river moves at 18.5 miles a second. Every second is 18.5 miles long, approximately. If it varies a little bit, it's not enough to make any big difference to us. But once I started to understand that the universe works for us, the second question was, well, if the universe works for us, why is there so much failure? Why is there so much despair? Why do so many people not achieve the goals that they have in their mind? And the answer to that is because they had bad information and they made decisions that caused something other than what they had in mind to occur.
How would one change that information? If you're basing your decisions on stimuli that you're getting or information that you're receiving, and you make a decision based on that, we've all made bad decisions. That's part of the trial and error of what it means to be a human. How do we use that to better make how do we make better decisions?
Well, again, I did bring a few things along with me to help illustrate. So, what I brought here is when I make a scale model seconds. And if you can imagine, every second is 18.5 miles long. Each ping pong ball is 40 millimeters. So this is a scale model second at 1/744,000th. So if we were to take this and multiply it by 744,000 times, we'd have an 18.5 mile long second. And that's how big each second is. Now, I like to explain to people that the building of reality, a second is to the building of reality like an atom is to the building of matter.
Okay.
This table is what it is because every atom of matter within it makes it be that way. If I were to change one atom of this table, it would be different than it is.
Right.
You wouldn't notice it. It would be imperceptible because there's so many atoms. But if I continued to change atoms one at a time, eventually this table would become less like the table it is and more like the atoms I'm changing it to.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The same thing happens with reality. If you look at these scale model seconds, you'll see I've applied a formula to it. It's called the Fibonacci recurrence series.
The Fibonacci numbers, right? Yeah.
Some people know this as the golden ratio, or the golden mean.
Which we see all through nature, by the way. We see it in the Nautilus, we see it in architecture, we see it in famous artworks. It's in the structure of our face in trees.
Right.
It's a very universal number.
Right, and man has copied that. The first human that we know of record that noticed this was Phidias. He was an architect in Greece, and he saw the patterns repeating in flora. And he then did the math behind it, and that's where you began to get the architecture that was mimicking the golden ratio with the proportions.
Because there's something about that natural proportion and the way it looks and the way it's it's almost part of our DNA.
Well, it is your DNA.
It is your DNA.
Your DNA is shaped that way.
It's shaped the same way.
If you tell me one measurement of your body, I could tell you all the other measurements of your body. The circle, the spiral at the top of your head in your hair is because you're formed by this proportion and this golden ratio. That's what Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man was all about. It's breaking it down to this formula. But what I've done is quantified time relative to the human experience. So we created a system based upon years. Everything is measured in years. Our career, how long we're married, how old we are. So I felt, well, if we're going to measure time in years, then the most usable, smallest piece of a year would be a second for a human being, like an atom to matter.
Right.
So I work with seconds. And I say the second that you're in, if you look at this, is always a total of the 2 seconds before it. 0 and 1 is 1, 1 and 1 is 2, 2 and 1 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5, 5 and 8 is 13. So each second has all of the information of all the seconds before it, like a Hansel and Gretel trail. You wouldn't have law and order. You would not be able to forensically investigate a crime if every second did not contain all of the information of all the seconds before.
So it's incremental.
To trace all the way back to the beginning.
It's incremental. Everything has to be...
And it's logical.
Incremental and evolutionary and inclusive and cumulative. All those things have to be there in order for that sequence to occur. Right. That is a natural law of the universe then.
That's how the universe works. What the universe is showing us is it's exposing itself to us. This is the frequency by which it vibrates. This is the patterns that are formed by it.
So in that speed of the Earth, the 18.5 miles per second, that is that's the rate of travel of the planet Earth.
Right.
And so at that time, and then so the planet Earth is revolving around the sun, and then the sun is revolving is in its own galaxy, and the galaxy is moving. So there's a series of motion, all which can never be duplicated. Correct? Once we go one direction, we can't go back, as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Yeah,
for all useful intents and purposes. When we make decisions, we need to make decisions knowing that once you crack the egg, you can't put the egg back in the shell. And if we make our decisions based upon truth, and that again gets to the root of this. Why, if it's this simple, if all we have to do is choose, make the choice in the moment that we're in to create the world the way we want it to be, why can't we do it more often? Because we have bad information. And the first thing you'll notice is that the clock that I've created to try to help people understand how time happens, you'll actually, if you can see this on the screen, the clock actually goes in the opposite direction.
I noticed that.
Than the clocks you've been used to your whole life.
Right.
So this is how time happens in the northern hemisphere. When you're looking down at the Earth from the North Pole, this is the direction the Earth turns in, and this is the direction that the second hand is spinning in. And this operates by this globe making one full rotation counterclockwise every 24 hours, and the indicator shows us, based upon the east coast of the United States, what time it is relative to the sun, which would be at the top of the clock. So as it goes around, it's actually showing you the true movement of time and as it's really happening. So
I see. So it's a very good illustration because it does sort of crystallize and sort of makes it more concrete how we are moving. And so we have to envision ourselves on this, as this giant swirl of a ball that's going through space, traveling at 18.5 miles per second. And so your comment about decisions making based on bad information, this. I mean, I know we're making progress in some ways, and yet we look at the world newspapers and we look at the headlines and we can see horrendous things happening all the time. Are we, in fact, making progress? I mean, have we? I mean, we can say that, yes, we have cell phones and we are on television and things are different. We're not, in a Roman Colosseum anymore. But are we making progress? Have we actually made progress? Is our information good?
Well, that's a couple of different questions. How are we making progress? That would depend upon your perspective and your point of view. So that would be the question there. Things go in cycles, and there are other times where civilizations on this planet had thought that they were very advanced, and then they found themselves
not so
penniless,
advanced, right?
not so grand. Right. So what would you equate progress to? What has happened to us is we've become separated from the true dynamic of this world. All these things that seem like occult and seem like strange stuff are coming to us in that way because we've been taught a systematic set of rules, and they're not all necessarily based on truth. So to look at things this way, you have to be able to look into nature. That's where it all came from. Mm-hmm. And since the Industrial Revolution, since the invention of the incandescent light bulb and machinery, we have separated ourselves from the natural cycles of the natural world.
That's true.
So we are now born into a completely subjective world. Over the last 50 years, I have watched the debasing of religions. I've watched government lose favor with people. So people in this day and age don't have much they believe in. They don't have much they can trust because we've separated ourselves from real truth. Everything that we surround ourselves with at this point is really just an expression of someone else's opinion. Mm-hmm. Where when you're in nature, you're surrounded by the same vibration that creates all of you.
I also think in nature there are laws that are constant that we can't change any more than we can change the rate of time. We can't speed up this time. We think that we can, but we can't. We can't slow this time down. This is a constant that is universal to every being on the world.
Well, you can speed it up and you can slow it down once you understand where time comes from. It's an electromagnetic construct. As I was driving through the scenic byways on my way up here, noticing that from my latitude to your latitude, there's definitely a difference in the amount of color in the leaves. Right. The reason for that is those leaves grow starting on December 21st after they've all fallen off the trees, because December 21st they get a little bit more electrical current from the sun than they did December 20th. Right. And every day they get a little bit more electrical current. And so that continues to make them assemble, kind of like if you had an electromagnet. If you remember back in junior high school, there was a battery and there was a copper wire and there was a nail and some iron filings. And when the teacher attached the two ends of the wire, the iron filings all lined up. Well, that's the basis of how everything in this universe works. The electromagnetic current is causing everything to line up and collect, attract, and repel. So magnetism is accelerated by heat, and it's retarded by cold. So one of the reasons that they've discovered today that they can help save heart attack victims by chilling them is because they're slowing down the electromagnetic, they're slowing down the metabolism of the entity by applying cold. You can make things basically stop by applying enough cold. If you heat it up, that's rapid oxidation, fire, poof.
So you were saying that is the process of slowing time,
or at least the process, or speeding it up. Is
it really slowing time, or just in the case that you use? I mean, if we were to, when there was an ice age on the planet, did things slow down?
It wouldn't slow down time, because time is, unless it slowed down the Earth, because we're basing. Don't forget, time is not real. It's something we've overlaid onto it. The time.
But time, I understand what you're saying logically, but philosophically, we know that time is moving because that time.
No,
That
I know now is continuing to evolve from what it is to what it's becoming. Time has nothing to do with that.
Now is
time is
evolving.
man-made's way of making sense of that motion and saying that so we could coordinate the construct of a karmic world. Time was invented by the Ice Age hunters around 15,000 years ago, because after we had come down from the trees, stopped eating nuts and fruits and began to hunt, we tracked herds. So we would then see migrating herds. And so we would count the number of moon phases between the herd migrations, and we would say in 6 moon phases, you, me, meet here.
Oh, and then we'd see.
We would catch the
herd.
herd.
Right.
So that was the use of time. Other than that, you don't really need it. But when you have to build something, when you need to coordinate, the system of time is what helps.
Especially when you're dealing
with
with seasons, you have to come back to a place in time. We know that certain crops come to fruition at certain times of the year. We know there's a time to reap and a time to sow, just as Ecclesiastes says in the Bible, for example. That's a very old and ancient idea. And I understand that process very clearly. That makes perfect sense to me as to sort of the roots of time and where it came from. What I'm concerned with is this, and it's just an intellectual wall of sorts to get over. It's the idea of, like you say, we are traveling at this rate of speed, so therefore we are on a perpetual river. We're on a perpetual river that never ends, and that's why we see ourselves age, we see people come and go in our lives, things happen, number of events occur, and yet we have a sense of history. By looking back at them, we can see what happened, and hopefully we can learn as a result of what we have been through, correctly? I mean, but yet that idea of time and travel is fascinating to me, because it means as if, I mean, all we really have is now, and we've always known that. But when you think of time, and you think of, say, mistakes you've made, wish I could go back and change that situation, I wish I could go back and do that, do we have the knowledge to do that? When you said earlier, we make decisions based on what we know at that time, and we have the ability to change that one way or the other. We can go 2 directions, or any fork in a row we can go based on our decision process. That decision process is based on perhaps empirical data of experiences that we've experienced through the course of our lives. You know, we don't stick our fingers in the fan, we don't put our hand on the stove, because we know that you're going to get burnt. You do that once, you don't do it again. So what you're saying then is that when we make these decisions, what you're talking about, we have the ability to make those decisions properly, but we haven't, correct?
In some cases we haven't, and basically it's because of bad information. Otherwise we would have made a proper decision.
Well, if there is so much empirical data about the horrors of war, why do we continue to make these problems?
Well, because greed seems to supersede.
Yeah, there's a definite situation there. You know, the idea of, so right now, even sitting here, we are flying through the universe at 18.5 miles a second.
Every second you've gone 18 miles.
And we're always in a new
miles,
place.
18 miles.
Right.
And again, it's not the wonder and the awe of the speed. It's not how big the universe is. What you see when you get to the bottom of it all is the nature of everything. And everything happens from moment to moment because of the electromagnetic current and the environment and the nature of the thing. Those things all come together to create possibilities. What's possible in 1 second is not necessarily possible in the next second.
It has to be a congruence and a confluence of events that happen to make those things happen.
Every moment is. And if you want it to be different, you have to change the confluence. So there's certain ways you can do that, depending upon your nature, depending upon what things are. Sometimes you should act in the second to create what you want. Sometimes you shouldn't act in the second to create what you want.
And that's only based on what you know from empirical data of experience. Correct?
Well, and it's also you're in a GPS. We have intuition. From the moment we get here, see, we're an electrical being. Your heart has 5 chemical nodes which create an electrical current. That electrical current polarizes and causes you to be alive. As soon as that power goes out, you begin to disintegrate. Take the wires off the battery, everything falls apart. You disintegrate, you go back to dust. As long as the electrical current is there, you're alive and you're connected. So you're connected, and your intelligence, your consciousness, which exists in everything on every level, has a certain awareness. And the problem is, when we're born, oftentimes, not only are we given bad information by like people telling us the sun is going up and down, when actually it's the earth turning, so it makes it impossible for me, or difficult for me to try to get people to see it the right way. They're so convinced the sun's going up and down. And then what happens is they fool with our intuition, because mom and dad are having a fight when you're 5 years old, and you get nervous and you say, you're nervous, and they say, don't worry, there's nothing wrong. So they tell you not to trust your own inner guidance, and they tell you the sun's going up and down. And after 18 years, they say, now go out and run your application. And it becomes a little difficult. So if we can start with understanding it's the earth turning, the speed that it's turning at, each second becomes the next. If you live for 72 years, that's 2.25 billion seconds, but you only get them one at a time. And the one you're in is the only one you can affect. So if you see it, life as a river moving at 18.5 miles a second, if you travel the river in a canoe, you want to be paying attention to what's coming up ahead. You can hear the waterfalls. You can see the rocks. Even if they're under the water, if you're looking, paying attention, you see the water moving over the rock.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
So if you're paying attention, you can avoid all the problems. If you know it's moving 18.5 miles a second in the direction you're going at, there's a sunny beach, you want to go have lunch, you put your oar in and you direct yourself over to the beach. But if you're not paying attention, you know, oh, there goes the beach I wanted to stop at. You're going to try to go against the current. It's not going to work. So getting people to understand the speed, direction, consistency, logical way the mathematics happen of choice is my way of trying to end some of the confusion, if I can.
Yeah, and the concept of being able to correct or aim yourself in the right direction is one that is somewhat controversial, because we all face decisions about what we have to do and when we're going to do it. We may have a ton of empirical data. We may have even been down the road before and seen the mistakes happen. But sometimes these things are unavoidable based on circumstances, time, and place. It's the whole idea of a sliding door. If you waited just 10 seconds to step off the curb on a city street, you might miss the bus or not miss the bus. I mean, those are decisions that we base on our process in the construct of time, but we still are prone to making mistakes and having these mistakes be made. And there's no real way to avoid that other than to sort of just go with the flow, getting back to the idea of the river, right?
Yeah, simplicity helps. The less you have to deal with, the more probable you're going to get certain aspects of things right. You can see that in the structure of a hydrogen atom, which has one proton and one electron. Very easy to track that electron, but as soon as you move up to helium and there's two electrons moving, you begin to enter into something
much more
you can't
complex
predict.
world. Yeah.
So then you keep adding electrons. Before you know it, you're up to uranium-238, and it's very volatile and it could explode any second. So many people live their lives with too many electrons. If they got rid of some of the electrons, they'd be able to pay attention to the fewer ones that are left and understand them better.
That's a very good analogy. I think that many of us are operating in the uranium mode because there's just too much going on in our lives. My guest today has been Michael Gallileo. He is an author, an inventor, a philosopher. What's your website, Michael?
GalileoRealtime.com.
GalileoRealtime.com is his website. You can see his clocks there. You can understand more about what he's written about. He's written books. What's the name of your book again?
Where Time Comes From. It's an ebook on Amazon.
Where Time Comes From. It's on Amazon. You can find it there. We've been talking about time. We're going to maybe perhaps continue this conversation again at some point. It's always been fascinating to me. It doesn't keep me awake at night, but it could potentially. So thank you very much for coming today, Michael, and we will continue our conversation.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.